Wow, this house is cute. But can I really get in the game in this economy? I do have savings, and I am responsible-ish. Ugh, I should bury it. I'm being wild. But what if I'm not being wild, though? Could I actually score a...
Kick off your home buying journey with Zillow's new BuyAbility tool. It makes it easy to find out what you can afford, so you can get off the bench and onto the playing field with confidence. Check your BuyAbility, only on Zillow.
Saturday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength, Saturday. Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner by knockout is Saturday. Saturday, bring it on.
Today on the Coaching Coordinator Podcast, we're diving into an aspect of coaching that is important to all phases of the game. How to build a smarter, more disciplined unit. Focus specifically on how that is done for the defensive side of the ball, but the concepts apply to offense and special teams as well. This clinic segment is from the most recent Lawrence First and Goal Clinic with Joe Bowen, the defensive coordinator and linebackers coach at the University of Buffalo, who was named the 2024 FootballScoop Linebackers Coach of the Year. Under his leadership, Buffalo produced 2 top tacklers in the nation while dramatically improving their overall defensive performance. In this segment, Coach Bowen shares his proven framework for structuring a defense, teaching players how to study offenses, and developing linebacker fundamentals that translate directly to game day success. He covers key topics like offensive identification, defensive meeting structure, and film study techniques that build instincts, discipline, and execution on the field. Now is the best time to think about how you will best teach your unit or position group this season. Now let's get into it with Coach Bowen.
The kids are still at practice, and I have no idea what's for dinner.
You can get a rotisserie chicken and 2 sides for just $15 in as fast as an hour with Walmart Express Delivery.
Who said that? Who's in my house? Don't play with me, because I'm not the one.
It's just your friendly Walmart announcer. This is a commercial.
Oh, okay. You were saying dinner for a family was just $15?
Yep, it'll be at your door by the time you get the kids home from practice. Order now. Welcome to your Walmart. Subject to availability, restrictions and fees apply.
Now that was a helpful commercial.
I can say to my new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, hey, find a keto-friendly restaurant nearby and text it to Beth and Steve. And it does, without me lifting a finger. So I can get in more squats anywhere I can. 1, 2, 3.
Will that be cash or credit?
Credit. 4.
Galaxy S25 Ultra, the AI companion that does the heavy lifting so you can do you. Get yours at Samsung.com. Compatible with select apps. Requires Google Gemini account. Results may vary based on input. Check responses for accuracy.
I appreciate the introduction, and I want to say thank you to everyone involved. And it's awesome, and it's a blessing to be able to speak for something that's for obviously such a great cause and very near and dear to my heart. So I always jump at an opportunity to talk football, but especially when it's for a great cause, and hopefully, somebody can take some benefit from hearing me talk here for the next 45 minutes or so. But, I wanted to talk about, obviously, we're going on our second year here at Buffalo, and we're able to win 9 games and win our bowl game. And I want to jump right into it because I know we have limited time. But the biggest thing is with new players and early enrollees, and when players come in, how you build your offseason structure and how you develop that plan with a lot of new faces. And we're very blessed to have one of the lowest numbers of transfer portal guys, leaving our program this past year. We have a lot of returning guys coming back, but you still obviously need to keep improving and keep getting better and developing those guys. And so many guys in your program are at different levels. So starting with that, but then really diving into linebacker play and some things that we do that I think translate to the game. So with that being said, I really appreciate this and the opportunity and just excited to jump into it. So, when we talk about building a defense, obviously there's a lot of layers and a lot of things that could mean. But for us, like when you first start out this semester, and I specifically am talking about like the winter and summertime, when you don't have, I try to break the year down into 4 phases. Phase 1 being the winter, phase 2, spring ball, phase 3, the summer and phase 4 of the season. And it's like when you start out, you have a lot of new faces or early enrollees, freshmen, transfers, returning guys with a lot of expectations. And like you need to have reasonable expectations for what those meeting room standards look like, and what you hold your guys to, and everyone talks about it. And I could sit up here and tell you, how we try to play defense and the things we hang our hat on and all those things. But I wanted to go more of the off-season route and how you try to structure your allotted time and the hours that are given to you, whether it's the high school or the collegiate level. And, the opportunity to be around your guys, maybe not as much, but taking advantage of that time and what you're allowed to utilize and how you structure a meeting and making sure they're taking great notes and being engaged. And I think as long as you create a captivating, environment and culture of learning and where people want to be engaged, like you got to create an engaging environment and ask these guys questions and keep the meeting room a place where learning is a conducive environment, right? And I think we do a good job of that, of trying to mix those things up and change it up, but obviously be very disciplined with how we present things and how we teach things and how organized and being on the same page, right? And getting your staff on the same page. Maybe have new staff members and all of that this time of the year is critical to establishing that foundation and not wasting any steps, but not skipping steps either. And, I think the one thing that we do that, I picked up a long time ago when I was at Michigan State as a GA is doing some football school and teaching guys about offenses. And the one thing I picked up there was this offensive universals I want to talk about. But I think we try to break it down into how we do the winter and summer and how we try to coach our guys and teaching them about the game of football. Because I think it's critical to the teaching progression that you cannot just jump right into things and jump right into scheme and you can't skip any steps. And everyone wants to, the new players want you to send them, the install and the new incoming freshmen. And you can't skip any steps. You got to teach them there's a progression to this thing and how you build it, and starting with offensive school and how offenses are wired and what makes them tick. And you can't assume nothing, right? We say it all the time around here. Like you can't assume they know anything from how many guys got to be on the line of scrimmage to how many guys are on the field. And coming up with a conducive plan that is effective to prepare you to have a chance to, install your hopefully your base stuff, 4 times throughout the year, in the winter, in the spring, in the summer, and in the fall. And so they're getting, better and better and better with the more repetition of all those things and hearing the same things over and again, but it may be in a different way or breaking it down in a different way. And there's a lot of ways to skin a cat. But I certainly think like with our offensive school, we try to start with offensive identification, personnel, formations, and run game. And they got to be able to regurgitate and take quizzes on the formations and how we call formations, because we don't have time on the sideline to, coach, it was 3 by 1. The tight end did this. The running back, I think the ball hit here. No, you got to be able to spit it out and speak our language. Say the name of they were in Trey Toesby, they ran counter, the ball hit in the A gap, whatever that might be. We got to be able to speak the same language, and they got to understand that, and it's got to start there. And the other part is with when you try to operate with tendencies and be able to tell your players on a Monday, here's what they do out of these formations. You can break it down to quite a limited package of what those things do. And you don't want to give your players too much, but certainly you got to find that balance. And if they know the formations well, they know offensive identification, they know what the personnel is. Like a lot of that's dictated if you try to match personnel, where you have certain calls based on the personnel groupings and the formations, and really breaking it down so they understand, all of it and the splits. And we'll get into that on the next slide here in a minute. But, offensive universals are something that we spend a ton of time on. And we try to add new ones every year. And I've added, since I heard about this and started doing it 7, 8 years ago, just really things that universally offenses like to do on different downs and distances, different parts of the field. And I think it improves the player's recognition and ability to call that stuff out and breaking it down into fun ways and showing it all the way from the Pee-wees to the pros, from Pop Warner to the NFL, and showing different examples of that stuff. And then you got to be able to define your term and your techniques and put your defensive packages into buckets or families like offensive guys do. And whether you have one-word calls or whether you have different personnel groupings, like they got to understand the big picture, in my opinion, of what those things mean from a holistic standpoint before you start just installing stuff. Like teach them holistically what these different buckets or categories or families or these different techniques and terms mean, and then showing them your drills before you get out there, because everyone wants to show these guys these drills during spring ball, but why not show them beforehand and show them before you get out there for winter workouts, and being able to show the why, because I'm going to get into the linebacker stuff and why drills show up and how they show up in games. And then defensive circuits, interception pursuit. Do we block the intended receiver? Do we block the quarterback? Like, where are we taking the ball? What's our ball security look like? How do we recover a fumble? Are you operating city and country fumble, or are you bloody knuckles grazing the grass? Like, what's being taught? What are your buzzwords? Like, those got to be taught and they got to be quizzed, and those guys got to know those things, so you don't have to waste, as much time you reintroduce it, reteach it, but you're not starting over when you get to spring ball and you go over those end of game situations or whatever they may be. Just, I think it helps so much with your players' situational awareness and understanding of the game. And then teaching them the base fundamentals of block destruction, tackling, and takeaways, which obviously win games along with effort and limiting explosive plays, as we all know, is a big thing now. But like, they got to know how we take on blocks, how we set edges, how we tackle, what's our procedure for tackling. And I'm going to get into that here in a little bit. And then base run and pass techniques. Like, how do we play a curl technique? What does a flat technique look like? Well, you can do a lot more with your back end, and we try to do a lot more disguising and holding our shells because these quarterbacks have a microphone in their headphone now, and we want to make quarterbacks make post-snap decisions. So they got to understand what the technique looks like. And so we can maybe do a little bit more, or maybe move a couple guys around and play the same thing, but it doesn't look the same. And you got to know the things defensively to your position that are required, and then you got to know alignments and disguises, and then we can start teaching you the defense. So all this stuff has to come first in terms of understanding the terminology of the defense, the fundamentals, the buckets, the categories, the techniques, and then basic fundamentals of getting off blocks, tackling the ball. Every play in football, unless it's an incomplete pass, ends in a tackle or a touchdown. And you have to be able to fundamentally break that stuff down and not wait until you're going to have the good and bad examples, but they should be able to coach themselves when they're out there and know what the mistake was and get immediate feedback to each other and have some accountability there, because they know the standard of how we tackle, how we take the ball away. We don't like to call them turnovers. We want to call them takeaways. And I think that is a mindset that's cultivated. And, we were top, we were very up there in the country as a program. A credit to Coach Lembo in turnover margin. And shoot, one of our linebackers led the country in forced fumbles, and the other one led the country in interceptions. And I think, yeah, they're great players. From a staff perspective, the entire staff making it a priority. And I'm a firm believer that you create your own luck in life. And the same thing with takeaways. You got to create your own luck and create those bounces that go your way.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Before we jump into today's conversation, I want to take a moment to tell you about an incredible opportunity to learn from some of the best coaches in the game while supporting a cause that truly matters. Lawrence First and Goal is more than just a clinic. It's a movement dedicated to funding pediatric brain tumor research and supporting cancer services. By purchasing a ticket, you get year-long access to over 100 in-depth coaching presentations covering every phase of the game. It's a one-of-a-kind coaching resource that not only helps you grow as a coach, but also makes a real impact in the fight against pediatric cancer. Don't miss this chance to expand your knowledge and make a difference. Visit lfgf2025.coachtube.com to get your ticket today. Proceeds go toward a great cause, and you get a year's worth of elite coaching content in return. Now let's get back to Coach Bowen.
With offensive identification, I talked about formation and backfield sets and backfield alignments. Where's the back? And the D-line got to know it. And, certainly they're going to have these by the ways and things they do differently, but you got to know what you're going to get out of these, where the tight end is based on where the back is, and in the core, out of the core. And the wide receiver split's got to tell us something based on motion and faxes. And we call, anybody non-traditional near the core a stranger, stranger danger. What's that guy going to do? Is he going to, fax a rock back on the snap? And then just the basic rules of offensive football, teaching the guys about, how do you identify eligibles, gotten to the point where I've, just simplified it. The end man on the line of scrimmage and anybody off the ball. And obviously you have your jersey numbers 0 through 49 and 80 through 99, but they got to know the end man on the line, anyone off the ball, how many guys got to be on the line of scrimmage, and then how we substitute. Day sub, are we going to try to sub? We call it baseball and hockey. What does that look like? Hockey's a fast line change and baseball's a slower sub, but they have to know how we substitute and the mechanics of getting through a practice before we can be out there and practice. And then you got to quiz them on it, and you got to continue to make them take these quizzes until they get it right. And it can't be memorization. It's like riding a bike. If I go a year without watching any film or trying to get better, I'm not going to be the same as I was a year ago. So you have to continue to improve and grow and be faster and quiz them on this stuff so it becomes second nature. And then I talked about the universals, things to be alert for that offenses university like to do. If anyone wants those, reaching out to me is fine. I'm not going to put them all on here, but second and long, alerting screens and draws, and balls in the alumni zone with the minus 40 to the plus 40, alerting the shot zone. We call it the alumni zone because that's where all the boosters want to sit, and trying to paint a picture in our players' heads. And where the trick plays happen, certain splits telling you things. And some of that stuff you might see on this tape here. But I think a lot of offensive coaches, as defensive coaches are too, we're copycat. You see the same stuff. Anything that's hurt you, you're going to see again. And you have to know universally what offenses do. And there's so many of these things that are just so universal to offenses across the country that you got to prepare your players for those before you even introduce scheme. It's about teaching them about how offenses operate and what they try to do before we get into the defensive side of the ball. This is like what a summer meeting structure schedule looked like. Teaching them formations one day, run schemes one day, block destruction one day, run fits and tackling one day, a focus on offensive universals one day, 2 days of pass rush, a day of pass coverage, zone and match techniques, a day on man-to-man coverage, a day on takeaways, and a day on just situational awareness. And I like to try to break this up where 50% of our meeting is on offensive school fundamentals. And then the other 50% try to start to install maybe part of our base defense, right? So you're kind of mixing it up and trying to get a little bit of both in the winter and in the summer when you're not just so focused on spring ball and fall camp. So that's kind of an example of what a meeting structure might look like in the summer. You might only have 8 of them, depending on when coaches go on vacation and those things, but try to take advantage based on how your structure is set up with the weight room and how many hours you have allocated towards the football side of things. And then teaching your guys how to watch film. A lot of these guys go their whole life with watching themselves on tape and fouling the ball or making a huddle tape. It's 9 minutes freaking long. And you got to teach them how to watch tape. 3 different types. Like, am I learning our defense? Am I studying my key? Am I watching the tape and trying to look at the entire defense? Or am I studying my position and what is my key on this particular play? And how would I react and what would I do? And then there's opponent study, studying your opponent and the splits and the formations and the recognition of the plays they run. And then there's player-specific study, studying some of your favorite DBs or linebackers that are in the NFL or other players in college that are doing some good stuff. And you got to flip your brain. And I think we do a good job of activating our players' brains and trying to get them to think of this game in a different way. And there's 5-step process of knowing the situation, make a call, mentally align yourself, identify your key or your match, and anticipate what's to come, and then read your key and execute. What would you do? How would your footwork be? What would your footwork look like? How would your primary key take your secondary key? And things of that nature. And kind of that's holistically the off-season from a football side of things, off the field meeting time. And now, I know that's already 14 minutes into this talk, so I want to jump into the linebacker fundamentals and techniques because I think that's the nut and bolts of what I want to talk about. And I got a lot to share from playing the linebacker position. To me is about footwork, block destruction, tackling, coverage, pass rush, and then obviously key reads, right? And all those mean a lot of different things, but if I can get through some footwork, block destruction, tackling, and some coverage, then that'd be a great night. And hopefully, you could take some things out of this. But I'm a firm believer. People say it all the time, but I'm not one of those guys that's going to go around just posting drills around Twitter that look good. They got to show up in the game. They got to show up in the game. And you got to find tangible examples of how they show up in the game and trying to tweak drills and find ways to make them better and listen to your players. If I can make the plays, I wouldn't be here. I'd still be playing. As you build those relationships of trust, like, is there a better way to do it? Is there a better way to make that player, play with more confidence or apply that technique with more confidence? And don't be afraid to tweak your drills and adjust them or stand in a different position when you coach the drill. Like, I've been fortunate to be around some great coaches to learn from. And it's just like, we spend so much time planning practice and planning these things, like, make it count. Make the time we're out in that grass is sacred. And the drills, you got to find the tangible. So find out the techniques and what's happening to your players in games and put them in those situations from a fundamental, decision-based, and then game-based situations. Break it down from a fundamental. We got to do close quarters drills, and then we got to make it decision-based where they got to make a decision. And then we got to holistically look at it from a game-based decision, how to put them in that position. And then show them why it's important. Right? It sounds simple, but show them how it shows up, and they'll fall in love with it. I'm a firm believer, and I know our head coach, Coach Lembo, is as well. And there's 2 positions in football. There's a power position, which is a man that's in a linebacker stance, wide base, feet under his armpits, a comfortable position with knees inside his feet. You got to have your knees inside your feet to play linebacker. It's too many guys are duck-footed and they're not able to change direction because their knees are outside their feet. You got to have your toes in when you do drills, so when you play the game, your toes are more pointed forward, and you can break on the inside balls of your feet because our position is so much based on change of direction and short area quickness and being able to adjust and adapt to the things we're seeing. But a guy in power is a guy ready to change direction quickly with tight hands and elbows or reverse arching his back. And then a speed position is a guy, gaining ground. So at linebacker, we're constantly in positions of going from speed to power and power to speed. And if you broke down every person on a football field, at some point or another, every player, all 22 guys are in power and speed. This running back's in a speed position. Okay, this offensive lineman is in power. This defender, he's in speed. This wide receiver stalk blocking is in power. He's in a powerful position, right? So teaching everyone in your program what those positions look like and how to put yourself in a great position. It's amazing how many players you get that just don't know how to efficiently move and take footwork and clicking their heels and crossing over, and your body's not in a powerful position on contact when you go to tackle. And I'll get to that when we talk about the tackling, okay? But I talked about your drill progression and breaking it down into fundamental decision-based and game-based. Like, when it's a fundamental drill, it should be done right 90 to 100% of the time. When you do a decision-based drill, like an angle tackle drill where the ball carrier could go one or two ways, then maybe 70 to 80%. You got to grade this stuff and make him make a decision, and then make the drill game-based and put him in a game-like situation, maybe with a decoy or something in his way that's making the window clear and cloudy. And we'll talk about that here in a second as well. But you got to think about your drills and how you're progressing that install from a fundamental footwork, block destruction, tackling, pass rush, coverage, and then key reads and run fits and those types of drills as you're building and trying to develop your linebackers.
That wraps up this episode of the Coach and Coordinator Podcast Clinic Series. A huge thank you to Coach Bowen for sharing his insights on building a smarter, more disciplined defense. His approach to teaching defensive players how to think, study, and execute is a game changer for any coach looking to elevate their unit. If you found this episode valuable, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It helps us continue to bring you top coaching content. And don't forget to check out Lauren's First and Goal at lfgf2025.coachtube.com to get year-long access to over 100 detailed coaching presentations while supporting a great cause. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Coach and Coordinator Podcast.